Hey there, listeners. I had a great interview with a lady called Dr. Serena Huang, and she's a top AI keynote speaker, chief data officer. She's the author of a book called The Inclusion Equation, and she's the founder of Data with Serena. Now, Serena actually goes into organizations and helps with them revolutionize their approach with talent, well-being, and DEI through data and AI. You know, a lot of organizations today, they talk about artificial intelligence, AI, and it's all good but by itself, it's not that great. What it needs is data, and data is very important. But the two of them together, AI and data, is a powerful combination. So much so, it can help you as an executive, as a leader, to help drive performance and well-being within your organization, around business and people. Fantastic conversation. The title is High Inclusion Drives High Levels of Well-being. So let's get you into this interview and enjoy.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us. I've got a great guest with me today. Her name is Dr. Serena Huang. Serena, a massive welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Great. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
I am actually in Chicago, the Windy City.
The windy city of Chicago. This is actually funny you're saying that because I'm from a city in New Zealand called Wellington, and they call it Windy Wellington.
Oh,
And I know that Chicago, you got the lake, but here we've got the ocean, and it's very similar to Chicago. And I know that because my brother and his wife and kids moved to Chicago a few years ago, and I got to visit them, I think twice. I think I went there. And maybe once. And so we went there. But of course, they launched a coffee brand that's very big here in New Zealand called Mojo Coffee. And of course, he launched some shops in Mojo in Chicago, which I understand you've been to.
yes. It's in fact one of my favorites in Chicago, and I was just there last week. So I remember it was so special because I always ask when I get a chance for them to explain the story behind the brand and the coffee beans, and they explained that they import from New Zealand. I thought, oh, that's really special. I haven't really heard this, so it always stuck with me. And I say that because I've been to New Zealand once when I was very young, and I hope to go back. So maybe I'll get to visit you and your brother at some point and have the real coffee from New Zealand locally.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So Mum and Dad have been in the industry 65 years in the coffee industry.
Wow.
And so they had different cafes. My brother and his wife were living in England at one stage, and I was living in Greece. This is in the 90s. And we went off to go and watch the latest Austin Powers movie that had come out. And we're having fish and chips to eat for lunch. And my brother turns around and says to me, well, when we go back to New Zealand, I want to start a coffee brand. I'm going to call it Mojo. And it's like, wow, okay, cool. And 2 or 3 years later, it started to become real. And 25 years later, it's gone very well, and it's been really great. So that's how it started here. And Dad's dad was the roaster and so forth. And then, of
Wow.
course, into Chicago, and pretty cool. And so just to see it go there and grow, that's been very, very special. Yeah, it's a good place.
Yeah. And such small world. And of course, we know very, very few small business survive. So yeah, especially expanding globally, that's extra. Definitely your brother has a superpower, I think. Now that I'm only 2 years into running my own business, and there were numerous times when I thought, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into?
Yeah. So you've got your own business, an organization called Data with Serena. You're an AI keynote speaker. And you also have a book called The Inclusion Equation, where you're it's an Amazon number one bestseller. So congratulations on that. That is awesome. Listeners, you can't see
Thank
this, but
you.
I can see the book just beside Serena. A
Yeah.
beautiful book, great cover. So first of all, let's hear more about you and your background, and then let's dive a little bit deeper into that book. And then I've got a whole lot of questions for you, but I also want to talk about AI and data and what it means for leaders in today's world. So Let's hear more about you and your background.
Sounds good. Well, I am a PhD economist by training. I started my career in consulting, where I got hands on practice with using data to help clients with different business decisions. And my research was actually around people. So think about economics is about supply and demand, but really focus on the people side, like within the company, the supply and demand of human capital, if you will, and how to optimize that. And about 4 years into my consulting journey, I got a call from GE recruiter, General Electric, saying they were creating a people, it actually was called HR analytics, COE at the time. And I thought, these are not words that usually go together, but many years ago. But they convinced me that their leadership team really wanted someone who loves the numbers and has a passion for people. And so I went in-house as my first in-house job. And from there, I really started building lots of HR analytics, people analytics teams from the ground up. Got a promotion, came back to Chicago at the time to GE Transportation, and then went on to build other teams at Kraft Heinz and PayPal. And gosh, so after I've done like five of these build from the ground up people analytics functions, I started to ask myself, and this is during COVID too, where I had lots of time to think. So I baked all the banana bread and pizza that I could. And I was thinking, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to just go and do another people analytics role. I didn't necessarily want to be a CHRO, which would be the next step within the HR function. And I really I asked myself this, what brings me the most joy? What brings the most joy is public speaking and content creation. So through public speaking, I'm able to share knowledge with people similar to what you said in our intro, actually, beyond my company walls. I didn't want to be just limiting my impact to my employer. That's great because I've always been with fairly large employers, but I wanted to go beyond those. And so that's one. And then content creation, I describe it as broadly, not just making videos. I don't dance on TikTok or anything like that, but writing, for example, is my way of expressing myself. I also do some painting. So I wanted to create content. And then I asked a provocative question. Can I make a living doing these things that I love, that bring me joy? So again, moving from a data executive in tech to making a living doing things I love. So I calculated I had about 6 months of runway. Like if nobody hires me to do anything, I'm gonna be fine for 6 months, and then I'll find a proper job at that point. Worst case scenario. And to my surprise, I was booked pretty instantly. Like within the first few weeks, I was booked until the end of the year. So within the first year, I got to 30 cities around the world doing speaking engagements, and I had influencer partnerships for that work and just tried a lot of things that I didn't have a chance to try in corporate. And I felt liberated. I feel alive, and it was just everything that I wanted, but then also much more challenging than I thought. And then somewhere along the line, I also got a book deal and devoted about a year of my time writing it, and now it's come out. So yes, so I've had I call them identity changes, right? Because becoming a solopreneur, stepping out of corporate, and then becoming a published author, those are identity changes. And I think about the questions that, that I thought through during COVID a lot is what am I doing with my life? And so far, I'm pretty happy with the choices, but it's of course not without its challenges.
Oh, what a great journey you've had there so far. There's more to come, which is really good. 30 cities and speaking on throughout those different cities, fantastic. I think, listeners, what I heard here was, it's not what actually Serena said, but leaders don't dance on TikTok. So it's good. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think some people with
Some do.
better dancing skills should absolutely dance. I am not one of them.
And maybe leaders who think they've got skills as leaders probably should go and dance on TikTok because they're not that
There
great as
you
leaders.
go.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
Yes. Be vulnerable and show us your authentic self.
And I actually like the question you actually asked yourself, which is what brings me the most joy? And I think for a lot of leaders today around our well-being, about where we are in life, our mindset, all that, That's actually a very interesting question. So yesterday I posted a photo of, not yesterday, the day before, here I am at an event, the room's all set up, ready to go, and I'm in my happy place. And the happy place being in front of people on the stage, doing a full day workshop with them, facilitating. That's my happy place. This is another one of my happy places, right? Being
Yeah.
with people like you, leaders, helping your voice, my voice, and developing other people's voices around leadership and so forth. So I think it's very important for us to think about. Yeah. Now, the book, the Inclusion Equation. Tell us more about the book.
Yeah, the inclusion equation really sits at the intersection of the technical data and AI and the human side of inclusion and well-being in the workplace. I decided to devote months of my life to write this because I noticed in my people analytics roles that there's so much effort in trying to get people a sense of belonging and inclusion. And then there's so much effort also on the other side to help employees be healthier. But those efforts are often disconnected. And in fact, so much so that employees sometimes they would say, I have so many initiatives from the company thrown at my face. I don't know what to do. There's free yoga, there's free meditation app, there's checkup on my health, and there's like career development days. There's so much. I don't have time. And I wonder, why don't those two silos work together more? Is there a connection between the two? So as I started to do research, I noticed that there's lots of research, lots of books on inclusion. There are lots of books on well-being, but none that really combine the two, and certainly none use data and AI as a thread. So I started doing my own research, and thinking back, I remember when I used to run big surveys, company-wide surveys, I was noticed the theme that teams that report a higher level of inclusion also report a higher level of health and well-being. In other words, if you feel more included, you feel healthier. And this probably doesn't shock anybody because if you think about the last time you felt excluded at work, whether it's a decision that impacted you, whether it's a golf outing that you didn't get invited to, or a dinner that you heard about on a Monday morning, you probably didn't feel very good. You probably didn't feel very good for a long time, actually. You wonder, what is wrong with me? Why am I not part of this community? Why am I excluded? So definitely there's a link between the two. So I use data as a thread to encourage organizations to think about them as a connected effort and not as siloed ones.
Yeah, good. Oh, I love that. In particular, really interesting how you're talking about the high inclusion and the high level of well-being and how it's related. Amazing. Yeah. And I'm not sure whether you saw part of the data that you work with, and that excuse, I don't have time.
Yes.
What's behind that as an excuse? Did you have any data?
Uh,
Did you see anything like that?
I don't have time for what specifically?
Okay. It's a very big topic by the sounds, but yeah.
Yes. So I think there's definitely a lot of I don't have time. And I think, I don't know if you heard this saying, but someone once said, give me your bank account or bank statement and your calendar, and I'll tell you what your priorities are. Why is that? Because when we care about something, when we truly care about something, we spend time and money on it. When you don't care, it won't show up on your calendar, it won't show up on your bank statements. So I think there's a lot of people who might say they care about certain things, but ultimately, if you're not investing time and money in it, that that is just those are just words. And leaders have to show with action. And again, I think the actions are backed up by things like investment and time and efforts to show that you truly care.
Yeah, totally. And I think it is, if they don't see the value in it, they also won't invest the time and money as well. But I think also there's the other side. They've got to invest some time and money in it to see the value. So
Yes,
it's
that's right.
a bit of a catch-22. But however, it's probably about what is the driver for them, the motivation for them as well.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, exactly. Yes, you can think about going to the gym all you want, but you're not building that muscle until you start lifting weights.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Now, leadership. How did you actually get into leadership yourself?
So I started, gosh, years ago. I was a single person center of excellence of people analytics. It was just me. I was the expert. And the work got so busy, I started to ask for additional resources on my team to help. And because people analytics at the time was so new, it just wasn't possible. So I got creative and I asked, okay, can I have a project based resource? Can I have like 25% of somebody? Can I maybe have a summer intern to try? So eventually I got to an yes. So I got a summer intern, a data scientist who helped me with building models. The first model we built was predicting which employee was going to resign. And it was fascinating, as you can imagine. And from there, I turned that intern after summer and I say, hey, look at the amazing things myself and the intern were able to accomplish. Imagine this at scale. What if we turn this into a full-time offer? So I finally got my first full-time person after that summer. And then after that was able to quickly show that for some of these data science work, you really need top talent and beyond myself to do the work and to scale. So at one point, I quadrupled the size of my team in about 7 months. So we went from like 5 to 20 plus. And yeah, so, obviously managing and leading are not the same things, but it definitely at different sizes of team, the leadership skill you need to have are different. And and that's how I got started. And I would say I was also fortunate in an environment where they really encourage leadership in different forms. There was a saying at GE at the time that everyone can be a leader. And of course, that sounds like, oh, it's great to be on the wall as a poster, but what does that really mean? But I remember being on different committees, being on different projects, and I would ask myself, how can I show up as a leader?
Mm.
And that could be different things. It may not be leading people, it may be leading a project, it may be providing thought leadership. And so I think about leadership in different dimensions, and we had different roles to play. So that's how I got started. And at one point, I was on a mission to recruit people to get into the people side doing data science because a lot of data scientists they have their picks of the world's best jobs. It's a cool job to have, it's a great skill, and it's very rare. And they want to work on cool projects like in supply chain, maybe in the customer space. But on the people side, using data science, that doesn't seem as interesting. So I'll tell them this. Look, you can predict weather, you can predict patterns and predict sales, all that is great. But being able to, why should you come to HR and work on data science? If you can predict human behavior, that is the best data scientist job you're going to have. But that is much more difficult than predicting where and when the truck is going to show up in a supply chain optimization problem, for instance. So, because humans are hard to predict. Yeah. And I definitely enjoyed it a lot. And yeah, and COVID, we'll maybe talk a little bit more about this, but I think during COVID, I saw a different side of leadership from myself and just from the world around me, even though we're locked down, so it's only on Zoom. But people needed different level of empathy, different level of care. And leadership wasn't just getting the projects done, it was actually making sure your humans are okay.
Mm.
So yeah, I'll pause there.
That's fascinating stuff that you're sharing there as well. Even going from 5 people to 20 people plus in your team in 7 months, that's scaling up is really amazing. The other thing I want to talk about later on, probably, or even maybe now, but I'm thinking about the data side of things with AI and which employee will resign. I
Yeah.
actually think that leaders today, that we're hearing about AI. I think data is the key. AI is
Yes.
one of the enablers to help us with that data. How do leaders today need to be an expert around data? Do they need to be an expert around AI, or do they need to be savvy around it? Where should they be with that?
Yes to all. So first of all, you can't have AI without data, right? So you definitely need data to be able to use AI. And I think everyone has seen that ChatGPT was one of the apps that grew the fastest, right? That gained momentum in ways we have never seen before. And it wasn't the technology itself isn't actually new. The technology itself has been around for a while, but it's the accessibility that has changed everything, right? We used to have to go to grad school for years to be able to code, to be able to build machine learning algorithms like I did to predict who is going to leave. But now you can actually use common people, human language, right? Or even voice and say, build me a model that predicts X, Y, and Z, and it will do it for you. Now, granted, if you haven't done any coding yourself and you can't debug anything, you can't understand the code coming out of the output, that doesn't help. But but the potential is definitely there. So the barrier is not what it used to be. So I think part of being a leader is being curious. And if you are being curious, you will want to know what is AI? How can I use it to make myself, my job, my team better than before? And it takes curiosity to try new things. So that will be my encouragement. Again, it's so easy to use that there's no reason not to. Plus, it's mostly free unless you get very fancy. So yeah, I don't see why not. And of course, LinkedIn's recent report show that AI literacy is the top skill that we all need. So the more reason to get ahead and not behind.
Yeah. Key word there being curiosity and being curious about things. Very important. Serena, this person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
Oh, I have a few. I think if you asked me 2 years ago, I would have definitely said Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, and seeing many tech companies going through difficult times and being able to stabilize it and continue to innovate with AI and the partnership with other AI firms and things like that. Very admirable. And then, well, I also know employees at Microsoft who speak highly of the culture. And recently, I've been starting to pay attention to are there people who look like me as well, who are in senior leadership roles? And Lisa Su comes to mind, who is the CEO of AMD, the chip company. And she is, I think, the only Taiwanese American woman at the C level for a very super technical semiconductor company. And I think that journey of being an immigrant in this country, moving from Taiwan to the US and then growing something to the level that it is today is admirable. And I just think about all the times that, gosh, I remember, and this is perhaps unique to my experience, but I'm sure some people can relate. But I remember, well, you all can't see me, but I'm petite. So I will walk into a meet with my intern or my junior associate to a client and to a stakeholder, and everyone will assume that they are the analytics executive and I'm the intern or associate. So, yes, I've had and this is even after email exchanges, even after calls, and it will be like the first time we're meeting in person, and they would automatically assume. And I think about, I'm pretty sure Lisa Su had some experience like that growing up in corporate America as well. And over time, I learned to use that to my advantage, right? I either use humor to disarm the person, or like if someone is just super arrogant about it, I will call them out. And of course, this takes courage and this takes a lot of practice and certain level of self-esteem for sure to do that. But I think that's, yeah, it's on my mind at many moments. And of course, there were times when I wouldn't do that. And then I wouldn't say anything. And then I feel horrible afterward. But yeah, but over time, I would find mentors and sponsors inside the company. I will share these experiences like, is this normal? Or, and some of them said, yes, it's a woman in a male dominated industry. Sometimes this happens. And this is how you handle it. So I appreciate those advice over the years. So at any time that I see, again, I don't know her story personally, but I would guess there are situations that she had to overcome as well.
Excellent. Now, the show here is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that statement, that title, what does it mean for you?
I think leadership's definitely changing and it's continuing to evolve. And in terms of both what makes a good leader, and I think what makes a good leader is a leader that the team needs. I think it's about whether or not you're serving your people. And the person who can really answer whether or not you are a good leader is the team that you're serving and not yourself. So over the years, I think COVID has brought to forefront the importance of health and well-being. Certainly physical health, right? We did at the time, we didn't want to be exposed to the virus before we knew what treatment options were available and things like that. But then we also saw during COVID, a lot of people lost family and friends to COVID. A lot of people lost their jobs because of COVID. And it all hit home because it impacted someone we knew. And we had never experienced that collectively as a human race before. So I remember having to deal with things like people on my team being losing their family members to COVID, being diagnosed with terminal illness. And some of them I haven't even met in person. Some of them are on the other side of the globe, right, in Europe or in Asia. And I quickly asked myself, what can I do right now to make the situation better? Because I can't fly there. How can I make it better, make sure they have the resources and help they need? So I do think it takes a different level of not just empathy, but also vulnerability
Mm.
too on your part to share and create a safe environment for people to share when they need help. Because it's the worst when people who need help feel like they can't seek it. And that really is detrimental to the entire team. So I think it's changed in many ways, but the leaders who can really emphasize on really have strong, I'll call them human skills, right, are going to do better longer term. Because if your team is not well, your team cannot perform. And I think it's definitely, yeah, the burnout. We talk about burnout since before COVID, and the conversation is still going on. We are still burned out, maybe not every minute, but it seems like it's still a problem that we need to solve. So I see leadership continuing to evolve, and my hope is every leader starts to pay more attention to things like well-being. And frankly, there's a lot of things you can do for $0 by checking in with people, by noticing things that are a little bit different, by asking those questions to build deeper connections so you actually know who they are outside of work.
Yeah, definitely. Really good points that you're sharing there. Really good. And I think you actually even answered the other question I've got a little bit later on, which is around employees' expectations of leaders change. And I think you've already answered that by what you just shared there. Yeah, so definitely
Right.
yes. And that's really good. I'm really glad you actually shared that. Now, I find that the world's getting very faster. And even if we think about AI and data, that's a great example of the world moving on and getting faster and so forth. Anything else based on what you've already shared, anything else on top of that you think leaders need to do to be successful in this fast paced, ever changing world?
Yes. I think because AI has created so much, let's be honest, anxiety for people
Mm.
around job displacement, right? Is AI going to replace me? And when is that going to happen? And what should I do? A lot of leaders are grappling with that and they don't know what to do. They don't know what's going to happen. And a lot of more traditionally minded leader might feel like I need to have a fully baked plan on what we're going to do with AI, how we're going to upskill every single person and redeploy the talent if that happens. And then I will communicate to everyone this fully baked plan. But AI is changing too quickly. The world is changing too quickly for that. You will never have a fully baked plan because it will take 3 years. By then, we'll be on ChatGPT, I don't know, it's 17.8, right?
Mm.
And who knows what's going to happen. But what employees need today, what your team members need today, is to know that you have a plan, that you are working on a plan, and you care about them, you care about their future. Because when they don't have that, what we start to do is we start to fill in the blanks in our mind, right? And that becomes, oh, I'm going to lose my job. Oh, I better find another job. And and that's not good for anybody. So my encouragement is in a fast-paced environment, be vulnerable about what you may not be 100% ready to share, but at least you are thinking about their future and you care about their careers.
Yeah, very good. I like that too, because there is a lot of void for people as well. And they start to overthink and then all sorts of things go on for them. It's very good. In your book, The Inclusion Equation, the well-being side of it, do you talk about anything around data or anything like that around people actually out there physically exercising, meditating? How's that actually helping people today?
Yes, yes. So it's funny that we actually have seen some companies give employees wearables, right? So a smartwatch of sorts, and they're able to track. It's all anonymized and then aggregated afterwards. So I don't know how many steps Serena takes and how many hours Dennis is sleeping per night. But in aggregate, if we're on a team, for example, we know the average and things like that. And an exchange, the company is able to, this was a consulting firm that did the experiment. The company was able to overlay that data with things like meeting and travel schedule. So what they found, right, you can imagine all kinds of possibilities here. And there's also a survey around just in general how you're doing, how you're feeling. Basically, they found that back-to-back meetings are terrible for health and well-being. And like, you can't sleep as well, and you're just generally less happy when you have that. But also, they found that travel can be very difficult and challenging for some people when they exceed a certain threshold. Now, everyone who gets into consulting obviously expects and wants a certain level of travel, right? The self selection into the process. But that also, there's a difference between going to 3 cities a week than going to one and staying there for 4 days and adjusting to time zones and things like that. But with that data, the firm was able to really pinpoint when it becomes dangerous, if you will, when it becomes risky and is really not good for their health. So with that, you can quickly build a more proactive way of helping employees. Like, hey, this is your fourth trip this week. Let's stop. Right? Or whatever the threshold is. So definitely there's ways to do that while respecting privacy and autonomy of employees who may not want to be part of the study. There's also things like kind of wearables in a way that detects whether or not a truck driver is falling asleep while driving. So very useful applications in that combines AI and uses AI and data for well-being. And I think there's so much potential in that space where we can use it for good. If you think about even just basic meetings and meeting data, right? I remember that I look into how many hours people spend outside of their normal working window, right? Whether it's through chat, email, or meetings. And you don't need to be a scientist to know that if you spend 16 hours a day outside of your normal window where you are when you should be awake, then your health is going to suffer long term. That's not sustainable. So this in particular is really important for global companies to consider because we can all stay up one night per week or one night per month to talk to our friends in other parts of the world. But but first of all, have we thought about, is it always the people outside of the HQ that is staying up? Because that usually happens, right? The US headquarter companies make everyone outside the US stay up and vice versa, right? If you have a Asia headquarter, people outside of Asia may have to stay up to talk to you. So I think about inclusion in that space as well. Can you be inclusive and be considerate and make sure we're at least taking turns? So it's not always the person in India staying up. It's not always the person in London staying up and so on. So yes, I think there's a lot more to be done in that space. And it takes the same thing I talked about earlier for leadership is curiosity and a genuine sense of care and empathy.
Awesome. So as we bring this episode interview to a close, if you've got your crystal ball out now and you think about the future, where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
Oh, with the recent advancement in AI, I think the leadership teams that really embrace AI will come out on top, as well as the leadership teams that not only embrace AI, but they also double down on their human skills, things like empathy, things like EQ, things like critical thinking, relationship building, and so on. Because as AI gets more advanced and routine tasks are automated, those things that AI cannot do easily become even more valuable. So you have to do both, upskill yourself on AI and the things that AI isn't good at doing. That will be my crystal ball.
Yeah. Good points. Very good points. It's been, seriously, I could sit here for hours talking with you in relation to AI, data, the human side of it. I just think this is all very, very fascinating and a topic that I could really get into with you. I think it's really good. If our listeners are wanting to get hold of you, where should they go?
Either my website, data with Serena, one word.com, or my LinkedIn profile. Love to hear from you. And I actually also have LinkedIn learning courses, 5 of them on these topics. So if you want to take somewhere between 30 to 90-minute courses on the topic, you can take them online and then share your thoughts with me.
Excellent. Once again, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Hey, there you go, listeners. Well, think about it, right? So what brings you most joy? Very interesting question. The other thing too is that high inclusion and higher levels of well-being are the things that are going to really help drive things. So if you have high inclusion, it's going to help drive high levels of well-being. The other thing here would be, are you a leader who is curious? A one that wants to go out there and learn more, especially in this AI and data-driven world that we are in today. Hey, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.